Hello everyone and welcome back to Viewer VOD Review, where I'm going to be watching your VODs, answering your questions that you've sent me to hopefully help all of us improve in some way throughout the course of this video. As always, if you wanted to submit a VOD, then the email is going to be in the description. Send a YouTube video or a file, either one works. Just ask me a couple of questions and tell me a little bit about yourself, maybe gaming background, just so I get a little bit of insight into it. Also, my Twitch is in the description if you want to see some of this stuff live, but let's go and get into it. Himbo is gold 3 at the recording of this video. He's playing with a couple of platinums and a couple of diamonds as well. He says he wants me to focus on critiquing his timing, positioning, and play style. He says he plays a little passive in this game because it's a bit higher MMR than he's used to, and his aim is usually a bit better, but he wants to focus on his playstyle stuff for now because he knows how to improve his aim. The thing I'm going to add to that is his peaking, because I think peaking is where he sees problems in his timing, positioning, and playstyle. And I do believe we're about to get an example of it right here. So let's see what's going wrong here. Alright, so there are two things I wanted to talk about when it comes to peeking in this round. So first and foremost, you don't want to let your enemy peek you at a 90-degree angle. And right here, you started going over to the right, and then you crept yourself back left. But you gave him the opportunity to peek you at a right angle like that. It didn't matter, you still picked up the frag, but if you would have got up on this box, he would have been peeking out at less than a 90-degree angle. It would have been better for you. That's just one thing to think about. It's a small thing I noticed. And then this right here is also relatively small because you don't expect this guy to be here. It's kind of like a lapse in decision making. But the way that went wrong is you crossed in front of your cipher. So let me explain this really quickly. So the cipher is technically the entry frag here. He's supposed to be clearing all of the major corners while you're coming in behind him to check the off angles that someone could peek from. So you coming in and crossing paths with him changes the responsibility of the group, and that's really difficult to actually do in game. But the only reason I mention is because it happens a few more times in this. But you don't want to cross paths with your entry fragger. It makes the game much more difficult than it needs to be. So just general rule of thumb, don't cross paths with the person in front of you. All right, the next round I wanted to talk about, we've got round 7, and I think this is what you're referring to when you say you wanted me to talk about your timing. So you get timing here, and this is actually one of the ways you can stop yourself from getting timing so often. So timing is usually going to come with game sense, and the more you play the game, the more you can start to read the map and read the enemy players, the less you're going to get timinged. But here you didn't actually get timing. It feels like it's bad timing, right? You're starting to walk up and then he peeks you at the perfect time. But actually the problem was, and I'll walk through this in game really quickly, but the problem was that you were holding that angle standard while walking up. So I'll run it through in game really fast. Okay, so I've set it up fairly similarly to how it was in game for you. So let's talk about timing. So timing, if I'm standing walking straight up like this, we know peeker's advantage is a big problem in Valorant. So you could get timing at any second because all he has to do is peek, and you're technically getting timing because then he has peeker's advantage and you're probably going to die. So instead, if I wrap over here and make it where he can't actually peek me, and then I can peek back every once in a while if I wanted to, if I'm slow walking up, that's how you can do that. That gives you the opportunity to time him. So even if you know that person's, or don't know that that person's there, if you're doing this standard just over and over, you're stopping yourself from getting timing while also giving you the opportunity to time him. So if he comes out, peeks, doesn't see you, and he starts to go heaven, you pop out and you are now timing him. So that's what you want to do. You don't want to just sit out and hold the angle in the open, even if you're walking up or just like standard holding the angle, jiggle peek it over and over. Or, you know, as you're walking up, try to strafe off to one side and then strafe back and then strafe back and then strafe back over and over. That way you're keeping yourself peeking. That way you're getting the timing advantage and they're losing that timing advantage, if that makes sense. Okay, so the next round I want to talk about, we've got round 8. So with this one, you're playing a 1-1-3 split, and you're just playing around in B. You got heaven smoked off just in case you wanted to push out, but you trigger in cipher traps, just causing little problems, which is great. That's how you want to play early round. It's a great default. You're baiting out a little bit of utility. They stage walled mid. You guys got a lot of utility out. Now's a good time to push, so correct play there. The problem comes in when once again you cross paths with your entry fragger, and I don't think you guys really established who the entry fragger is. So technically Phoenix was the entry fragger there, and you should let Phoenix entry frag, but he was ahead of you there and you swung past him, but it was pretty close. But for the most part, just don't pass your entry fragger. And there's one more thing I want to talk about here. If you are entry fragging, which is what you started doing, you never want to stop in the threshold. So I'll pause here. So you and Phoenix are standing in front of each other, right? So for one, whenever you're entry fragging, you have to wide swing. Almost always, you have to wide swing. That way the person behind you can come out and peek immediately. So Phoenix now has to cross into bullet path. Well, for one, as the entry fragger, you don't take out the Cypher camera. You should be clearing the room for threats because this is a dangerous area. But that's just lapse in judgment. It's not really a big deal. Just go for the threats. But you see Phoenix, he has to cross into bullet fire and then past bullet fire to actually be effective here, or into bullet fire and stop and spray down and hope he wins the duel. So that's called shadow peeking, when you and your teammates peek at the same time right behind each other. That way you're both getting wall banged through each other essentially. So this is a lost fight. Phoenix gets very lucky and ends up killing their other Phoenix. But that's called a shadow peek. Oh, Phoenix actually did the right thing and swung a little bit past you in killing him, so he won that fight. But you don't want to stop in the threshold as the entry fragger. You have to wide swing it, and if your entry fragger is wide swinging, that's when you're peeking right behind him. Sorry, I hit the microphone. But you never want to stop in the entryway and don't cross paths with your entry fragger. That's what we want to learn from this round. All right, so the next round I want to talk about is round 14. You're trying to throw this one way. I'll talk about this one way a little later in map pressure on defense. But what I want to talk about is the way you rotate from the people mid. So you have two people playing mid. Mid's relatively safe. You got a little antsy because they pinged that there were people there, so you automatically started to go to the CT rotation. But what you should have done is once the Phoenix died, just immediately go and try to support your Sage instead of rotating all the way around through CT. Because if they decide to just shoot through this wall, your Sage dies, and then this round is probably lost because they would have already bled out through mid. No one wouldn't have got those kills there. But what you want to do is, the reason this map is so defender-sided, and I would still say it's defender-sided even after the changes, is because you can rotate so quickly through heaven, mid, and heaven to go support your teammates. Right, you're essentially always stacking a site. So if you're the person playing limbo on A in heaven, if your Omen runs into trouble or your Sage runs into trouble mid, you have to go and support one of those people, right? You don't want to rotate all the way around past Sage to come in around from the other side. Just go support her. That way you can both try to keep control of mid together. It's better to die together than to try to take two 1v(x) fights that are probably not going to work out. Just rotate really fast whenever you see like 4 people at an area, and just go support your teammates. You'll find you'll win a lot more rounds that way. All right, so the next round I want to talk about, we got round 17. You're throwing a one-way up here on this ledge. Now you throw this one way a lot. I didn't actually see you get use out of it though. And I think the problem is I would never throw that one way. Personally, I would never throw that one way because I don't play ramps. But I would really never throw that one way if I wasn't going to play ramps that round. Because if you play ramps, then you can get a pick. Maybe you're playing ramps with an operator, you get a pick, and then you fall back, and then that one way kind of makes you safer, and then you can play heaven after you aggressively peek it. But the way you're playing it, you're just kind of wasting your biggest utility, or the way you played it this round. Also with this smoke, so what I want to say about this round is you have to establish dominance of a site. So this is what I'm talking about when you're talking about positioning and stuff like that. You have to establish your dominance on a site. So right now, I assume you heard all of them coming, so you backed up really heavily. But this smoke actually, I want to see after you throw the smoke, this smoke doesn't actually do anything. So whenever you throw the smoke, I'll show you. There's a portion right here where they can actually peek through. So they don't actually have to push through the smoke to fight anybody. They can make this smoke completely useless. But what you should be doing is you can actually land the smoke right here, and it's a one-way for this portion. Or whenever you're lined up right here, this black bar right here, you can throw it directly to the left of this black bar and it'll land deep. That way the smoke cuts off right here. And you can play around that really heavily. That's what I like doing because I want to keep them out of A site completely. I want them to get no information, no vision on A site. I don't want them to be able to come all the way into this A lobby and take fights. What you want to do is establish your utility far up. That way they have to push through your utility to actually come on the site, or play around the timings of your utility, obviously, because you're playing Viper. But you want them to have to play around your utility to actually come to site instead of being able to come on site and take a 50-50. And if we happen to go ramps, we'll run into a problem. But make sure you force them to play around your utility. Don't try to cross your fingers and hope that they come to your utility, if that makes sense. Establish that site dominance. All right, so honestly, the last thing I want to say about this video is I want to see you play with a little more confidence. Because in all honesty, the fights that you could have won, you did win, and it seemed like through watching this VOD review that you were kind of better than the people that you were playing against. Obviously you let them get a little bit too much control of the map, and then they would push the site, and then you would get, double peaked or something like that at an angle that you had to hold. But if you took the fight to them, you were pretty much winning all of the situations that I would call winnable. You won almost all of them that I saw. But yeah, I would just say play with a little more confidence. Let it hang a little bit. Just kind of do your thing. But I hope I did justice to your VOD review, and I'll let you guys enjoy the highlights for now. So I'll see you in the next one.
And I've been chillin', watching the ocean with you. Baby, up with a slow motion crew. And we up in our cloudlands when people change, but not us. And we just chillin', kicking it, kissed by the sun. Could be soaked to the skin in the mall soon. I know she got the good vibes.